The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life, conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay, rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult marijuana prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat.
Welcome back, everyone. 31 after the hour. And today in our Cannabis Community Chat, we're going to be visiting with Joe Schrank. He's an addiction expert and founder of Loft 107, a sober living facility in Brooklyn, New York, and one of the co-founders of the website, thefix.com. Joe, welcome to the Russ Belville Show.
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Glad to hear from you. And I'm really excited to talk to you. I've been following the website, thefix.com. And as someone who comes from a background, my dad was a drug addict who recovered and became a drug and alcohol counselor. I've seen both sides of the issue, and I'm really excited to get your perspective on the unfolding marijuana legalization in this country.
Well, it's a big issue. Where would you like to start?
Well, I think a lot of people in my audience have kind of a disdain or a distrust for the addiction recovery community, feeling that many of us have been, siphoned into drug courts and rehabs that many of us felt we didn't need. And we're used to hearing from people in rehab being very anti-legalization. You come off as someone who's pro-legalization, and why would that be the case for someone who supports addiction recovery?
Well, I don't know that addiction recovery has anything to do with the law, is the first thing. It's an individual decision based on, a bunch of different factors. For myself, I haven't been intoxicated in 18 years. For a very specific reason. I don't tolerate it well. But I don't think that there's any way to legislate people into making that decision, and nor do I think they should. I think, trying to, we don't have laws for diabetics. In the truest sense, I believe that using or not using, or using to impairment or not using to impairment if you're a recreational user, I think it's a health issue. And I don't think that it has any place under a jurisdiction of any kind of legal component. It's also incredibly racist. The incarceration rates are absurd. And the truth is, it's too much power for the government to have. If an individual is going to put something into their body, it's their decision. It's not a government decision.
As the states are moving forward with marijuana legalization, 4 of them now that are legalizing marijuana markets, they all have varying tax rates, and with those taxes, varying amounts that they're forwarding to drug prevention. How would you like to see the taxes distributed with respect to preventing and helping people with substance problems?
Well, I think that the whole thing needs to be redone. It's great that there's this opportunity as states legalize that you can have taxes that could help people in recovery or get into recovery, remove some of the barriers to accessibility, remove some of the ridiculous treatment centers that only proselytize AA. They're not coming at it from a perspective of science or any sort of empirical evidence. And so that's a real opportunity. But the other thing that isn't even looked at or addressed is the low taxation on alcohol. Alcohol taxes have always been low. You can get drunk on the cheap. And they don't pay for the damage that they cause to the community. So in my view, there should be an intoxicating substance tax that is designated for addiction and recovery services, and that should include alcohol. Because, just for example, and it's an extreme example, but it is true, Wyoming hasn't raised taxes on alcohol since 1935. And it's like 10 cents a gallon on beer or something. Basically you can get real drunk, real cheap in Wyoming. You can crash a car, you can beat up your wife, you can, do all the things that happen when people drink alcohol, and the community gets stuck with that bill. Not the distributor, not the manufacturer of beer. And so I think that this is an opportunity for America to have a conversation and a dialogue about intoxication and our relationship with it. Who makes the decision? And that would be my hope.
as these states are developing these taxation policies, that is something that I've heard brought up as well. In my home state here in Oregon, they bring up how low the alcohol taxes are. And our opponents like to point out that the reason those alcohol taxes are so low is because alcohol is a huge industry with lots of lobbyists. And they use that
It's a huge industry with lots of lobbyists. You know what? I hate to do this. Can you call me back in 2 minutes?
Sure.
You can? Okay.
Absolutely. We'll go to a commercial break and get you right back on the line.
All right. I've had some stuff happen. Okay, thanks, man.
Okay, 2 minutes. We'll be right back. We'll go to our anti-drug public service announcement of the day. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show. We'll connect back up with addiction expert Joe Schrank right after this short break. Make sure you check out Joe's work at thefix.com, the latest on addiction and substance abuse issues. Good to see people in the treatment community are getting on our side. We're back with more of Joe Schrank right after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with our Shoutcast stream for all internet-enabled media players. Go to rad-r.us/420shout or just click the Shoutcast icon below the live radio feed at 420radio.org.
You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com and follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter.
In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Hey, Lindsay? I wish you didn't smoke weed. You're not the same when you smoke. And I miss my friend. I'll be outside.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org.
Welcome back, everyone. 39 after the hour. We're rejoined by Joe Schrank from thefix.com. Thanks for coming back with us there, Joe.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that.
Oh, I understand. We're doing it live. Every now and then, my dog will start barking, so I know what it's like to have to adjust on the fly.
I mean, it was ridiculous. The guy, I was going to do this from the car, and he couldn't get my car out of the garage, and I was standing on the street, and then he got it. So anyway, here we are.
Oh, what a shame. Well, we were talking about intoxication tax, and that's an interesting subject to me. I've heard it phrased a couple of ways. One way from the people who say these alcohol taxes haven't been raised in so long, that substances ought to be taxed as a measure of how much harm they cause society so that they can pay their own bills. Our opponents often say, we bring in $1 of tax for every $10 of cost. But do you fear that raising the alcohol or cigarette tax might lead inadvertently to a resurgence in black market trafficking of those substances?
I don't think so. Look, I think that there's always going to be some kind of black market. There's always going to be people trying to game the system, but most people don't want to be thought of as criminals. Would you rather go to 7-Eleven and buy whatever it is that you buy, or would you rather set up some clandestine meeting, to do this? I think that most people would prefer to just pay the tax and be honest about it. So I don't think it's ever going to eliminate the criminality that goes along with it, but it will certainly reduce it. There's no question about that. It's already being seen. There's data on this already in Colorado and in Portugal, who's had this kind of policy for a decade. So we do know empirically and scientifically that is true. And so I don't see any point. I think that alcohol they've enjoyed a monopoly on legal intoxication for a very long time, and they don't want to let it go. And so a lot of the distilled spirits lobby and wine lobbies and beer, et cetera, they have a vested interest in demonizing marijuana as a safer alternative if you are a person who wants to take the risk of intoxication. Intoxication comes with a risk. It does. It's less of a risk if it's marijuana than if it's alcohol.
You know, this risk and these lobbies that you talk about, that's part of what gets used against us in legalization campaigns, is that the reason those taxes haven't gone up on alcohol is because the alcohol lobby is so powerful. So they fear if we have this big marijuana lobby, they also will resist high taxation. Is that a cause for concern for you?
No, I don't think it's a cause for concern. I think that's up to the states to legislate this and to do this in a way where it doesn't necessarily have to be high taxation, but it has to be appropriate taxation. And I agree. I mean, it would be difficult to say which form of intoxication is causing more damage, although we do know that alcohol is very damaging. It costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money in cleanup. It costs a lot of money in police calls and violence between partners and incarcerations and uninsured emergency room visit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in my view, it's the consumer who should pay for that. I don't want to pay for it. I really don't. I haven't had a drink in 18 years. I'm not going to, I don't want to clean up the mess. And so I think that it is up to the state to roll this out and the legalization so that it's taxed appropriately, so that it does cover, the consumer covers the cost of what they are using. And you can't do that without having a conversation about alcohol. You can't just say, okay, it's going to be marijuana. We're going to tax marijuana at a high rate. It needs to be revisited, our relationship as a country with alcohol.
We're speaking with Joe Schrank. He's a co-founder of thefix.com, and he's the founder of Loft 107. It's a sober living facility in Brooklyn. And Joe, I wanted to ask you with respect to that, there's kind of a new paradigm shift that's happening in the understanding of addiction. Johann Hari's got a book out on this that we're going to talk about soon. It talks about addiction not as the power of a chemical, but really a deficit of connection, of human connection. Have you heard of these new theories, and what do you think of them?
Well, I think that the theory is right on. I mean, I think that the one thing that we know that helps people, there are many, many roads to recovery and many paths to recovery. The traditional path and the path that people like has been AA. And AA is a great organization for certain people, myself being one of them. It's not a great organization for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. The truth is, if you played bridge with sober people 3 nights a week, you sent one group to do that, okay, we're going to hang out, nobody's going to get drunk, and we're going to play cards, and another group that went to AA, the rates would probably be about the same. And so a common problem and a common solution and a peer group are essential for people who are wanting to be in recovery. And so I think that it is right on target, and that's something that we really need to look at. And a tax on alcohol and marijuana could help pay for peer-supported housing and all the things that we know that help people longer term stay in recovery.
There is also some controversy in the recovery world on the use of marijuana as an exit drug from harder addictions like heroin or alcohol. What's your take on maintenance therapy, using marijuana as something?
I'm all for maintenance. I'm all for it, 100%. Look, if I get a kid in my world chasing down heroin addicts and trying to get them into treatment, if one of them says, okay, I'm going to give it up, here's my rig, here's my dope, I'm going to smoke pot, I'm going to think, victory, good for you, man. I think that you have to replace something. If you're going to take away opiates, you have to replace that with something. And you can't replace that with scolding or judgment or shame or you didn't do a fourth step. That's not going to do it. So if people want to replace and maintain on marijuana, I'm all for it. And, I take a lot of heat for this because people say, that's just using one drug for another. And I say, well, yeah, yes, it is.
Yes.
Why is that a problem? Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You're right.
We replace the one that could kill you with one that will not.
Right. We replace the one that could kill you with the one that will, it won't kill you. And at some point, maybe you don't want to use that drug anymore either. I don't know. But that's not where we are right now. If you're going to reduce your rate of, your risk of death to zero from incredibly high, then I think that that's a big, huge victory. And I think that you're also, look, every kid I get into sober living, not every kid, a lot of the kids that I get into sober living, if they're IV users, they have Hep C, they have HIV, they have all kinds of things that they are unintended consequences that they now have to deal with in a compounded way. So not only do they have addiction, they also have Hep C or HIV or some other thing that's spread by using IV needles. Now, if these kids were passing around a joint, we'd all be much better off.
It's so refreshing to hear, this progressive thought from people leading in the addiction and recovery industries. We really appreciate your perspective on this. Before we let you go, Joe, other than thefix.com, do you have any contacts or websites you'd like to give out to people more interested in this subject?
Sure, you can find, absolutely. You can find me at reboundbrooklyn.com, which is the treatment program that we run, and also Facebook, just Joe Schrank. I'm very responsive. I'm happy to talk to anybody. If you have an AA audience, they're all pissed off at me. That's fine. I'm not a sensitive person anymore. I can take my lumps if you want to tell me, whatever. I'm happy to hear it. But look, I think that if 114 people died in the country of anything, the way they die of overdose, we'd be having a really important conversation about how to change that. And for some reason, we're not. And we would be looking at all options. One of the options being, in this case, one of the options being marijuana. And so, okay, why not? It is pure moral posturing, judgment, and shame that keeps people in this cycle, that keeps them in this loop of you didn't do this and you didn't do that and blah, 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 blah. And, and I think that, look, recovery is valid. In all forms of it. And so it doesn't make any sense to take that off the table.
Thank you.
And just a quick story, just a quick thing. I was listening to this doctor talk about comparing rates of damage between marijuana and alcohol. And, of course, the conclusion was the risk with alcohol is exponentially higher than the risk of marijuana. And the interviewer said, so what would you rather have your teenage children use? And the guy said, alcohol. I was like, what the fuck? What? Why? Well, it's more social. You can't smoke there. You're a fringe person, or you're sort of banished to a certain socio idea of people. And so we have a big, huge, long way to go. If a doctor would prefer his children to take the risk of alcohol because of the social stigma associated with marijuana.
Very well put. Joe Schrank from thefix.com. Thanks so much for joining us and offering your perspective. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Take care, man.
All right.